Servant Leaders of Orlando. Happy Saturday. We're going to start with an assignment. So you have been handed an index card, and I'd like you to write down how you're feeling right now on the first line. Just how you're feeling. We're going to be returning to this index card throughout our next 40 minutes together. So when you're finished writing down, I'm just looking for one word. Okay, everyone's ready? If they'd look back up. So Confucius says, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And in 2011, my teacher appeared in the form of a drunk driver. And I was incapacitated physically, but not mentally or emotionally. And I had a choice. I could look through the rearview mirror of blame, or I could look through the windshield of responsibility. Because what I realized was, in order to heal this, I was going to need to heal this, and I was going to need to heal this. And this wasn't easy, because that wasn't a place that I lingered very often. I knew I would have to go inward. And you know why I didn't go inward very often? Because I had a lot of distractions. I had work, and I had boards, and I had family, and I had community, and I had email, and I had television, and I had my phone. So I was a human doing, and I wasn't a human being. But in order to move my body again, to move my arms and my legs and my neck, I had to just be a human being for a little while. And that's where my journey in social awareness and in emotional intelligence began. Because in order to move everything again, I had to remove a lot of things from my life. So I'd like to take you on a journey today of social awareness and emotional intelligence. And in order to do that, we're going to have to do a lot of exercises together. So just like I did with my body, but we're going to do them with our mind and our heart and our body. So today is a very broad brush on a very, very deep subject. And if it piques your interest, feel free to talk to Jeremy or talk to me about seminars, workshops, things that are customized for your office. But right now, I'd like you to stand with me. Now, after my accident, it took me almost 7 months to lift my arms to here. So every day that I get to do this is a day that I'm grateful. So I'd like you right now to think about what you're grateful for, and then to reach as high as you possibly can. Now a little higher, a little higher. You can put your hands down. Now can I tell you what I observed? I observed that when I asked you to reach as high as you possibly could, and then I asked you to reach just a little bit higher, you did. And then I asked you to reach a little bit higher, you reached even higher. I'd like you to keep that same spirit throughout the rest of our time together today and the rest of the conference. Right now, I'd like you to close your eyes. I'm going to ask you to call to mind an unpleasant experience you've had of late. Kind of a not your finest moment experience, if you will. Maybe you got cross with someone, you became argumentative, you were exasperated, you were snitty, you were sarcastic. Maybe you were interrupted, or you interrupted someone just so you could get the conversation over with. Maybe you spent time forming a rebuttal as someone spoke to you, instead of really listening to how they felt. Maybe on your way here, you cut someone off in traffic, or someone cut you off. Or a squirrel darted out in front of you and tried to decide which way to go, and you had to sit there patiently and wait for them, as I did this morning. So I'd like you to bring that to mind, because this isn't something you're going to share today. but it is something that you're going to release. So, you're going to have an opportunity to forgive others and to forgive yourself. Maybe you have to think back just an hour ago, a couple of days ago, a couple months ago, a couple weeks ago. We're going to purge this once and for all. So wherever you are on the journey of that particular struggle, I'd like you to embrace it for the last few moments because we're about to let it go for good. Now, in a moment, we're going to leave this room in complete silence. When we get to our destination, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes again and listen for more instructions. You can open your eyes now, and if you need to, you're not going to have your eyes open very often when we get to our destination, but if you need to, you're welcome to grab your sunglasses. Okay. All right. When you get back to your seat, there are two things I need you to know. One, I'd like you to write down how you're feeling on the second line of the index card. One-word answers are perfect, just the feeling that you're feeling. Second thing I need you to know is that when we left the room, there were things placed under your chair. I do not want you to look at them right now. Just leave them, and there will be a time when we need to access those. But just know that they are there. Okay. Can I get one person to share how they felt about going outside? Anyone? Refreshed. Ooh. Peaceful. Energized. Open. Warm. Relieved. Oh. Encouraged. Relieved. What's that?
Well, relieved that I threw that away.
Good. How did we feel about that? Relieved? Okay. We can do this all the time. Sometimes we need to create an opportunity for closure when we don't have that opportunity for closure, but know that we can ceremoniously rid ourselves of those things by doing these types of things, a big part of emotional intelligence. And if you can't hear me in the back of the room, please just raise your hand. I would like to know so I can make sure everyone can hear. So today is really going to be an intersection of science and soul. It's really about heart and brain together. Okay, so we're going to be talking about a little bit of neuroscience, a little bit of biology, a little bit about emotions. So there are 34% of the population of Americans are left brain, meaning they're very methodical and very logical. Can we see if there are any people in the room like that? Okay. Then we have people who are right-brained. They're very creative. They're very big thinkers, big picture thinkers. Any of those? Okay. That's 29% of the population. 34% of the population have both. Who wants to claim both? Okay. Good. We're going to need you to bring both hemispheres today to this class to grasp all the concepts that we have for you. All right, so Harvard did some really interesting studies, and they studied business students. One of the things that they looked at was why some business students, when they left Harvard, were doing extremely well, and why some were not doing so well. And it came down to 3 factors as to why some became great leaders and some did not. Can we guess those 3 factors? We might be speaking about one today. Right? Okay. What's the first? Harvard. Think Harvard. I took some classes there. Incredible institution. What's the product of Harvard? Academia. So intellect. So it's IQ. They have some of the highest IQs coming out of Harvard, right? So that's what their brand is. When they're putting someone out in the workplace, you have the smartest person that we could possibly give you. Sometimes they did well, sometimes they didn't. What's the second thing that they would be able to produce at Harvard that you need to bring to work? Knowledge. Technical skill sets, yes. Technical knowledge. So first it was intellect, your IQ. Second, it was technical knowledge. And then They thought that was enough. They really thought that that would just be enough to be successful in the workplace, but they found that no, it's not enough. We also needed emotional intelligence. And so we started seeing some of the first emotional intelligence classes coming out of Harvard. So emotional intelligence, you've heard of it before, is EI and EQ. It's the same thing, but you'll hear it referred to both ways. Then, we have this Venn diagram of IQ, EQ, and personality, meaning that in order to be a whole person, it's your personality, your EQ, and your IQ. And I'm sure, I know that the last speaker talked a little bit about different types of assessments. I do a lot of that in my line of work. That's really, really important, that you understand who you are, how your brain works, how the rest of you works with IQ, and your personality type. So I had the privilege of studying under Dan Goleman. Dan Goleman came out of Harvard. He is one of the best in the industry. I was studying with him at the Omega Institute in New York. And he has this model for emotional intelligence. So he looks at first self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, social skills, and empathy. We're going to crack it down a little bit differently because I think the other slide that I'm going to show you next is a better way to describe it. What has happened since his movement when he first started in emotional intelligence, empathy is now built into the entire process. You won't see empathy separate. In the former days, he did have it separate, but empathy is part of the entire process to be fully competent in this area. So the competencies of emotional intelligence are really personal and then social. So those are the two fundamental pillars of emotional intelligence. But in the buckets of emotional intelligence, you have self-awareness, which is how in tune you are with your particular emotions. Self-management is your ability to regulate your emotional state. So what's the difference between self-awareness and self-management? First, I have to be aware of what's happening. So if I'm in a room with a group of individuals at work, and someone makes a comment, and someone in the room gets incensed. How could they say that? They're criticizing me. That doesn't necessarily come from the moment. That could come from your childhood. That could come from something happening in your personal relationship. We all know that what's happening today is often not exactly what's happening today, because a lot of self-awareness is understanding all the things that happened in your past and all those mirrors that you have. Because emotions are essentially predictions. If I have an emotion that's based on a prediction that I have, and then I have to add that to cognition. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. So there's an instinctive emotion, that's instinct. It's an impulse, it's very quick. Then there's a feeling, how people feel, lasts a little bit longer. Then what comes next? If you have a feeling for a long time, what is that? A mood, right? So there's emotion, feeling, mood. Very nuanced, right? Very nuanced. Sometimes it's really hard for us to talk about these things because we didn't talk about these things in our past. We have a lot of people, because of the generations that we grew up in, the traditionalists, the baby boomers, the Xers, the Ys. If our parents, if our grandparents were not emotionally intelligent, which many of them were coming out of world wars, right? They didn't talk about emotions. They bottled up a lot because they had seen a lot and they didn't discuss it. Those were passed on to our parents. Those were passed on to the next level of children. This is really important, self-awareness, because knowing how you react not only affects you in the workplace, it affects you in all your relationships, with your spouse, with your children. If your grandparents weren't emotionally intelligent, how did they pass that on to their children? Perhaps they weren't emotionally intelligent. How did they pass that on to you? Perhaps we struggle with emotional intelligence. What about our children? They will struggle with emotional intelligence. This is a really, really powerful tool. And I'm going to tell you, if you embrace it, it's kind of like a superpower. It really, really is. This is a superpower. It's one of the best kept secrets to not only make you successful in work, but to make you successful in your relationships and in life. It takes a lot of hard work, though, I'm not going to lie. Now, self-management, how you regulate your emotional state. So first you have to be aware of it. You're sitting in that meeting, someone said something, they criticized me. What's happening to me right now? Why are my hands getting hot? Why is my face flushing? What's that pit I feel in my stomach? What is happening to me at this very moment? How am I going to react? What do I need to do in order to calm myself, to self-soothe, to be compassionate to myself? I know that this is bringing up feelings of inadequacy. You have to be able to stop yourself. So social awareness is just feeling that feeling. Self-management is regulating that feeling. Okay, I know that I'm getting angry right now. I know that I'm about to withdraw or I'm about to attack. Can I control my emotions? And we'll see why that's so difficult in just a few moments.
Can I take a picture?
You're welcome to. Then we're getting into social competencies. So this is how we deal with others. First, we need to understand ourselves, then we can understand others. So when we talked outside, we can't give what we don't have, right? If we're not socially aware of how we feel and what's happening to us in that very moment, how do we know what's happening to another person? Say there's a person across the room and you see that they're starting to get angry. If you know how to self-deal with your emotions, you can help that person if they're about to explode, if they're about to withdraw. But you can't do it if, one, you don't notice it in yourself, and two, you don't know how to control yourself. The only way you're going to be able to pass this on to the people that you lead, to the people that you love, is by really focusing on yourself first and then knowing how to help others. So it's how in tune you are to the emotions of others. And then in relationship management, your ability to navigate emotions in interactions with others. So I'm going to go back to that, and I'd like you to tell me what your greatest strength is and your greatest weakness. And I'd like you to write it on your index card. I'm going to go back to this. So there's self-awareness, how in tune you are with your own emotions. Self-management, your ability to regulate your emotional state. Social awareness, how in tune you are with others' emotions. And relationship management, your ability to navigate emotions and interactions with others. And before you write anything down, let me warn you. You go, man, I know when my wife is about to, or I know my husband so well. We think we know others a lot better than we do, but we don't. And we think we know ourselves a lot better than we do, but we don't. So just think about, in all honesty, where you really need to focus. What is your strength? What is your weakness? No one else will be privy to this information but you. Okay. Is everyone ready? Okay. I'd also like you to write down one person that you think is highly emotionally intelligent. You may not know them that well. You may know them very well. Just one person you think, that person is really highly emotionally intelligent based on the things that we were just discussing. Sometimes it's hard to identify someone. As I said, Jesus Christ is one of our greatest examples of this. It's hard for anyone to come close to that. But if you can, try. Okay. I'd like to tell you about a little incident at a place where it's a pleasure to shop. So many years ago, I oversaw the Olive Gardens to the United States and Canada when I worked for Darden Restaurants, and I was traveling quite a bit. And I wore a jawbone. Is anyone familiar with the old jawbones? You know, you could hear everything, you could talk through that. And I remember going through Publix all the time. You know, I'm so busy, I've got my card, I gotta hurry up, I got things to do, I'm talking, oh yeah, we need to get some dry ice. That freezer went down, okay, here's what we need to do, blah, 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 blah. I'm walking through Publix, I'm talking on my phone, I'm grabbing my stuff, I'm, hey, to the cashier, hey, sorry, so sorry, thanks. And I realized, wow, what a freaking jerk was I when I was lying flat on my back, thinking about my social awareness. I couldn't really do that anymore, But I was so busy all the time that I realized, was I the kind of person who just walks by hundreds of other people in the grocery store, never even acknowledging them because I'm talking to someone 1,000 miles away? And it wasn't about what I was doing, it was about the person I was becoming. And that is what struck me so much when I had my accident, just lying there. Because, when the paramedic pulled me out, he said, "Lady, you are lucky to be alive. I can't even believe you survived that accident." And I was lucky to be alive. I am lucky to be alive. And I took a lot of time to think, wow, that was my very last moment. Who am I? Not what kind of education do I have, what kind of title do I have, what kind of toys do I have, what kind of house do I have, what kind of car do I have? Who am I? Am I the kind of person who ignores other people because I'm just so busy? If I really went back and looked at my beliefs, which is what we do when we go deep dive in emotional intelligence, we look at your core values and your beliefs and we align them. And you'd be surprised at how much we're doing that doesn't align with what we think our values and beliefs are. And this was one. I was becoming something that I did not think I was. I was very involved in my church, my community, and mentorship, and this is how I acted. I want to take you to last year. I was in Publix near my home, Baldwin Park, and I was in the line at the store. The cashier was there. And I'm just going to give you the lineup in the cashier line. So here's the cashier. Here's me. I've got a little green cart, a little green bucket. And in front of me is a guy on a phone texting. In front of him is a guy on the phone talking. Not talking to the cashier, talking to somebody completely different. It was me several years prior. And then behind me is a guy with a shopping cart. Behind him is a guy who's also texting. So just the guy and I were standing there, and I finished with my green basket, and I turned around and I said, "Excuse me, would you mind if I just walked kind of around you so I can put my basket over there?" And he said, "Whatever." I'm like, okay. So I walked over and I put it under the conveyor belt, and I walked back around, and he's really lethargic about taking his things out of the basket. He was just kind of like putting them on the conveyor belt. And I said, "Excuse me, would it be okay if I helped you take those things out of your cart?" He's like, "Whatever." And at that moment, my brain did not react. I know this because I wasn't. Have you ever had that moment where you say something, but you don't even, it comes out of your mouth and then you're like, did I say that? Like, how did I say that? Where did that come from? So I had one of those moments. And I just said, "Excuse me, is everything okay?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Oh, would you like to talk about it?" Now, why I'm asking a guy in the grocery store like this is a counseling session or something, But it wasn't coming from here. It didn't come from here. It came from here. I'm telling you. It's like it bypassed this and just went whoop, right out of my mouth. And you know what he said? He said, "My wife just died." He said, "I don't know why I'm here. I don't know why I'm here." And he's just broke into tears. And we had taken everything off, and I tapped the guy on the shoulder who was in front of me, who was texting, and I said, "Excuse me, could you take this cart?" And he's like, not really paying attention. The guy's chatting, in front of him. He's, yeah, dude. And and he starts to walk away. So the guy who's texting took the cart kind of reluctantly, like, oh, whatever, lady. And I went and put my arms around this very large man, and he was just sobbing. And suddenly, I felt an arm right here, and it was the man behind that man, and he had his arms on me, and he was hugging the man from behind. And then suddenly, I felt the man who'd been texting with his arms around me, putting his hands on the man who was crying. And here we were, like this big, sad family, sandwiched in the line at Publix, all hugging each other. And we tried to help him because he started saying, I don't want to go home, I don't want to go home. And I asked, do you have a support system? And he said, I have a younger son, but I don't know what to say to him, and I'm done. He said, I know my wife died. I had to watch her die for a year from cancer because a year ago, my son got hit by a drunk driver. And I don't know what to do. He said, I've had it. I'm at the end. I'm finished. I'm not going home. And I said, you got to go home because your son's waiting for you. And the guy behind him was like, man, you've got to go home. You're what he needs right now. You have to be there for him. And the guy behind me is like, man, you got this, dude. And we're all doing this for a few moments. And the cashier's like, excuse me, can I help you? Is there anything you need right now? And he said, I needed this. I needed this. And we all hugged each other. We're like, you can do this. And the guy, we all got our groceries and left Publix together. And if I was on my jawbone being a jerk like I had been, I would have missed that moment. And honestly, intuitively, here in my brain, I did not know that that was happening. But something inside me knew that was happening. And I credit that to being more intuitive, to listening, even when I know I'm not listening. I credit that to emotional intelligence, to really being more self-aware. And I don't know how it's going to happen in you or if it happens in you, but I'm going to tell you, I had this wall built around me where things just didn't penetrate. Things from the outside didn't penetrate. I didn't penetrate the outside in the ways that I do today. So before, it was kind of like there was a whole world on the outside, all these external factors, right? And I was living from the outside in. Oh, the news and the economy and the whatever crap was happening at work and in the family, it was all barraging me. And I let it find a lot of real estate and chatter in my brain. But now, I'm living from the inside out. I really feel connected to Source. I really feel connected to God because I'm going inside. And even when we pray, I wasn't making that connection in the past. I prayed every day, but that connection wasn't as strong as it is today. And I really believe this is a superpower, that it can allow us to do things that we don't even know that we can do when we embrace it. So this is under your chair. I don't want you to look at it yet. But this is just the 4 domains of emotional intelligence. And I'm going to read these to you if you can't see them in the back there. The first is self-awareness. Just a few things. We go really, really deep in later workshops, but this is just a drop in the bucket. Know your story and how it affects you. Make peace with your past. Know your beliefs, your emotions, and your behavior patterns. Know your relationship patterns. In self-management, develop your breathing and relaxation. Do you notice you've already done some of these today? Learn positive, self-affirming beliefs. Develop self-soothing and self-motivation skills, and maintain good physical health. Social awareness, now getting into that second pillar of social. We have understand nonverbal communication. Develop a positive view of others. Understand the basic emotional needs. Understand games and personal integrity. Relationship management, develop skills for reflective listening and empathy, develop skills for assertive communication, learn conflict resolution skills, Learn skills for support and affirmation of others. It's a lot of work, guys, I'm telling you. I mean, for each and every one of these, there are so many drills that we run when we do these workshops to help people help themselves, help their families, help their coworkers, help transform their workplaces and their lives. Now, there's a lot of mind chatter going on in your brain, taking up real estate. I want you to see just a quick video of clarity. So what do we think about that? It's true. It's true. So we're going to be talking a little bit about feelings. We're going to get into that discussion in a moment. I want to just go through the basic feelings. So they say that there are 5 to 6 major feelings that we have. Happiness, sadness, fear, disgust, anger, and surprise. I want to tell you a quick thing that happened to me. I love to fly. I'm not one of those people who doesn't like flying, but I had a terrible experience on a flight one time, and it really scared me to death. And I happened to be on my way to a business trip. It was an international flight, so I had like 5 people in a row. And I'm coming down the row, and I look, and I was like, oh my God, what's happening to those people? And there were 5 people sitting there with very surprised looks on their faces. You know, and you're peering into their eyes, and they're scared. I'm reading like bewilderment, what's happening to me, and there is foam coming out of their mouth, like this yellow, disgusting foam coming out of their mouth. All 5 of them, and they're all they're all looking at each other like, what is happening? Oh my God, what's happening? And I'm thinking, I've seen enough horror movies to know they are rabid. I mean, they are dangerous. And if I go any closer, they could bite me. I could become a werewolf. I mean, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, they are danger, danger, stay away, right? And I'm looking and I'm like backing up with my little case, and the lady behind me is like, what are you doing? Keep going, keep going. And I'm like, oh my God, what's happening? What's happening? I'm so scared, right? I'm in a panic state. I don't know what to do. And suddenly, oh, did I just turn that off? Oh, okay. And suddenly I look down and I see that one of them has a tray table out. And I see this on the tray table. It's airborne. Yeah. And I realize that they didn't know you had to put this in a cup of water. And it was just foaming out of their mouths because they tossed it back like it was a piece of candy, and it's foaming. I mean, literally, don't ever do this at home. It's foaming out of their mouths. And I'm scared to death. I am scared. I am just so surprised and so fearful at the same time because I was reading their body language, right? Okay? So we look at people's expressions and we feel our own expressions, but it's just a prediction. I predicted that those people were rabid because I had seen some really bad horror movies and I had seen this before, right? So my brain could not comprehend what was happening. I had no clue because they were scared. The looks on their faces was scared, embarrassment, you know? So I read the situation completely wrong. And we do this all the time. So these are all of the major emotions. It's right underneath your seat. So if you take those out for a second. Whoops. So these are the types of expressions that we have. There is an intensity of feelings up in the left-hand corner. These are your intensity of feelings. You're happy, you're sad, you're angry, you're afraid, you're ashamed, right? They can start very low. If you're happy today, oh, mellow, I'm pleased. I'm asking you to write these things down on your sheet for a reason, right? Right now, I'd like you to write, after you heard Rourke Denver speak, how'd you feel? After the Calm is Contagious video. Write it down on your index card if you would. But pick one of these. How'd you feel? Now you have a plethora of words to describe your feelings on the subject. Now this is something we spend a lot of time on in workshops. We're just glossing over it. I want you to have this handy stuff. You also have your basic tenets there, the principles of emotional intelligence. And before we leave, I'll be giving you a test in emotional intelligence that you can take home. It's just a really preliminary one. We have much more in depth. Okay. So sometimes, I know that we're running. Sometimes when we just look at someone, we think that we understand their emotions, but we don't. So especially, I teach global leadership here. A lot of different cultures have very different ways of looking at things. So remember that just within our own culture, we don't know what someone's thinking unless we ask. We truly do need to verify. And especially if we're looking at the global context, we do not know what someone from other cultures is speaking. When I lived in Japan, oftentimes I did not know what a person was feeling because they have a poker face. And I saw multi-million-dollar deals go sideways because people from our culture thought they could understand what was happening in that culture, like when they went silent. They thought that meant they had to up the ante. All right, I'll give you 5 million. No, I'll give you 6 million. I'll give you 7 million. The Japanese would just sit there and wait, like, you know, not saying a word. Please don't assume that we know what other people are thinking until we ask them. So we think that our brains are these well-oiled machines. But according to the National Science Foundation, we have 12,000 to 60 thoughts a day. We've also seen that some studies say we have 80,000 thoughts a day. So in an hour, we're having thousands and thousands of thoughts, right? 80% of those are negative, and 95% are repetitive. So what does that tell you? if 80% of your thoughts are negative and 95% are negative? Sounds like the news. What? Always thinking negatively, right. Right, always thinking negatively. So don't believe everything you think, okay? And this is where we need to protect ourselves from what's coming in. Just like our bodies, garbage in, garbage out. We're putting crap in our bodies, we're not fueling our bodies, we're depleting our bodies. And we're doing the same thing with every impulse, everything that's coming in, whether it's on your phone, it's television, whatever it may be. So according to HeartMath is an organization that helps people lower their blood pressure. There's been a lot of studies done. We used to think that our brain controlled a lot of our heart. It's not true. They're having conversations, but our heart is controlling a lot of what's happening with our brains. So remember when I talked to you a little bit about what happened in Publix? Your gut, your head, and your heart are all working. Sometimes one of them takes over because it knows what's happening before your brain does. So your gut is directly engaged with the world. It's instinctive and has a lot of intuition. It's very unself-conscious, and it's immediate, practical, and direct. That is, I think, what happened to me in Publix. I did not know my brain would ask that question. It just happened. Your heart reaches out to the world. It's your inner life of emotions, your memories, your images, your visions, and your dreams. Sometimes that speaks first in a conversation before your brain. And then some, it's your head reaching out to the world, your inner life of logic, reasoning, detailed future plans. This is important. These are the regions of the brain. This is the limbic system. Within the limbic system, you have two really important things that we're going to discuss today. We can't go into everything. But your neocortex and your amygdala. So your neocortex is your executive functioning brain. It's where all the knowing, the planning is all located. Then you have the amygdala. This is a really small almond-shaped thing that gets you into trouble so much. This is all your emotional responses and your aggressive behavior. Yours, mine, everyone's. So we'd like to think that this one's really in charge, but imagine that they are both passengers in a car and they're driving. Only one person can drive, right? When we're in a car. Someone has to be the passenger, someone has to be the driver. Sometimes this is your driver, sometimes this is your driver. When this is your driver, beware. This only takes 1 second to happen. 1 second. It's faster than your neocortex, your prefrontal lobe. So your amygdala can transform things in an instant. And you know what it does? It raises your adrenaline, cortisol, epinephrine, dopamine. Cortisol is not good for us, right? Helps us gain weight, actually. It's a stressor. All of these things happen when we go into this mode. Amygdala is responsible for fight, flight, or freeze. And the problem is that when this happens, when a trigger sets you off, what's going to happen? You're going to be hijacked, right? You're going to have an emotional hijacking. What happens in a hijacking on a plane? They take the plane, they commandeer it, and it's probably going to crash and burn. And so are we. And what happens when a plane crashes? What do we say about the people inside? We call them souls, right? The souls all around you are going to crash and burn. First your soul is, and then all the others. Because when we engage in really toxic behavior, that's what happens. So it's really important that we know our triggers. We study self-awareness to know, why is this happening to me right now? Is it my childhood? Is it a relationship thing? How can I take all of these buttons off of me, right? Someone can't push your buttons if they're not there. But it takes an excruciating amount of pain and time to remove your buttons. It's a lot of work. Then we need to know how to respond to them. How do we respond to our emotional triggers? And then how will we change them? We have to know how we will change how we respond to people. So the soul, if it can only acknowledge its wounded condition, manifests amazing capacities for recovery when it finds its home in God and receives His grace. Dallas Willard. If you've ever heard John Ortberg, he's really wonderful. So this is what happens in your mind a lot, right? Lots of real estate, lots of chatter within the brain. Here's an important point. During the chatter, if someone is saying something to you, you have this wonderful self-mechanism inside your body to deflect it, okay? If someone's saying, you're ugly, you're fat, you're stupid, whatever, you can go, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. I know I'm a good person. I know I'm kind. I know I'm generous. And I know I'm bright. I know I'm beautiful. The problem is, all those thoughts that are going through your mind, that 80% of negative thoughts, a lot of them are you. You know what you don't have when you say it? The mechanism goes away. That shield that you can put up when someone else says something, it just drops right down. It doesn't exist. So when we wake up in the morning, we go, man, I look fat today. Gosh, I'm so tired. All of this is just you. It's just you talking to yourself with negative thoughts, and your brain cannot determine whether it's coming from someone else or it's you. It's bad news altogether, okay? So you need to be careful about how you address you. First thing in the morning, all throughout the day, you need to be praising you. You need to be taking all those negative thoughts and turning them all into positive thoughts. Now, view of bad news, overthinking. Overthinking is linked to psychological problems such as depression and anxiety. It's likely that overthinking causes mental health to decline. As your mental health declines, the more likely you are to overthink. It's a very vicious cycle. Now, here's the problem. We are putting a lot of toxins in our body on a daily basis by watching the news. I'm not saying that you can't watch the news, but I'm saying be very selective. If you just have it running in the background, if you have it on the radio, all these things are affecting you and your children, and it's poisoning us. Now, I teach global leadership. We have to watch some news, right? But be careful about how you intake things, because there are a lot of subliminal messages that are coming into your body. And if you can read and control what you're doing, then you're going to be much healthier and happier. Now, visualizing is a form of overthinking in a very positive way. When you visualize with a purpose, you're not overthinking. Don't overthink in the negative. Form it into a vision and a purpose. So, it's your favorite? Mine too. So remember, as a man thinketh, so is he. Right? So whatever your physical, mental, emotional pain is right now that you think, I can't let go of this, just think about it again, because you're going to be able to. These strategies for EQ you experienced today, and many more that I didn't write down. But you were open and curious, you practiced breathing techniques, you spent time in nature, you wrote down what you were feeling, you greeted people by name, you practiced the art of listening, you wrote down a person that you thought was a person who exhibited good emotional intelligence. Maybe that person can be your mentor. Okay? So like I said, whatever you're experiencing, mental, emotional, spiritual, you can change that. Okay? Think again. You have the capacity because now you have a superpower. Okay? So I don't believe that you are here by accident. It wasn't a coincidence either. Coincidence is what Albert Einstein used to say is God's way of remaining anonymous. You were here because there was something that you needed to learn. So, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And the student was ready. And the teacher may have been in the form of one of the speakers who is up here speaking during the conference these last 2 days, or it may have been a seatmate next to you. It may have been someone that you met during the course of this conference. But they showed up, and so did you. I would like to wish you a very enlightened journey on your self-awareness, on your social awareness, and on your journey of emotional intelligence. God bless. Thank you.